Hey guys, welcome to this episode of The Deep End with Pastor Steve Ryan and Kyle Headlee. We are so excited I'm not very excited to talk about this. It's kind of, let me tell you, the reason why I am excited, but not, is that when this event happened on Saturday, I was just like, I never thought in my life I would experience an attempted or successful assassination on a president. So it's almost like 9/11 when everyone knows where they were that day. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget, I was going to the bathroom and I ran out of the bathroom on Saturday and was like, Sharisa, they tried to kill Trump. And she was like, what? And it was like a whole thing in our household.
Yeah. I was actually laying on the bed asleep, and Suzanne came and woke me up and said, hey, my dad just called and said that they tried to kill Trump. So we immediately turned on the news. And see, I was born in 1964. Kennedy was killed on November 22nd of 1963. So I obviously didn't remember that. But I do remember Reagan.
You would have been what, in your 20s with Reagan?
I think Reagan was shot at in either 80 or 81, which would have put me at 16 or 17.
Okay.
And you probably remember when Reagan was shot at, one of his top assistants, James Brady, was paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of remember that vividly. And I was in fact, Reagan was one of my favorite presidents. I couldn't vote for him the first time. And I don't think I started voting until 88 when Bush Sr. ran. But I loved Reagan. I thought he was amazing. But I didn't really understand politics. But, you know, he's my boy. I like Trump. I don't always like everything he says. And I think Trump, over the years, has said things in a way that he probably could have reworded. And I don't believe anyone should ever have to be shot at. And I know there was an innocent bystander, that gentleman that got killed, which is horrible. But, you know, I just think we're in this spiritual battle. And Trump, I believe God's hands on his life. But what I'm hoping from Trump is that he keeps standing strong, but stops with some of the rhetoric of name calling.
Yeah. I kind of wrote that down as my closing thoughts, but I can jump in.
Go ahead.
I can skip over to it. Trump, first of all, I wanted to say, it's kind of funny how you said you didn't vote until 88, because there would have been one presidential election before that you were old enough to vote for. Mm-hmm. Same thing with me. So I could have voted in 2012, but I didn't. I don't know. I was 20, didn't really think much of it. But in 2016, I voted. You know, in 2020, I voted. Obviously, I'm going to vote in 2024. So I think there is that little bit of time where you're just a little immature and you're kind of interested in politics, but it takes you a little while to get into it.
Yeah, I would say unless you were geared towards it, you probably don't even think about it.
Yeah, and I think it's, I had Kalea in 2012 already. She was a year old. But I didn't think much of it until 2016. I had Kalea. She was 5, and Kenai was almost a year. And, now it's like, okay, I need to start. What is their future going to look like? I want to have my hands into their future. So,
well, I'll tell you an interesting, because I know you're getting ready to look at your notes and talk about what you had written down. But I think it was in 92. Would that
have been Clinton?
Yeah, Clinton, because Clinton, ran in 92 and won in 96 also. Maybe it was 96. But I was living in Texas. My dad, strangely enough, being a white middle-class guy who achieved a lot, you would think would be conservative. And I think he kind of liked Reagan, but he despised the Bushes. Despised the Bushes. He despised anyone that was running against Bill Clinton in both elections. And I remember we got into the biggest arguments over politics. And this is really, there's always been that a little bit, but I mean, it was bad to the point where we almost weren't talking. And finally, I told my dad, I said, you know what? I voted for the winner in 1988, and which was Bush Sr., because he only made it through one term and didn't win re-election. Maybe it was Bush Sr. He was running against in the first one. So we were going down to vote, and I told my dad, I said, you know what? My politics don't matter as much as my relationship with you. I'm going to go in and vote for Bill Clinton.
Oh, wow.
And I did, and thank God Clinton had already won the presidency before they ever counted Texas.
Yeah.
But my relationship with my dad was more important.
Yeah.
But my dad, he hung to that Democrat thing until the very end.
It's funny that you say that because I didn't disagree with my dad on a lot of things. He was my hero, you know. But I think some of our biggest fights in our lifetime were actually about politics. And
Really?
it's not even so much as to, I was just a dumb kid, you know? And so, like, my dad was very similar to your point of views, I would say, very similar to you. He wasn't so much on social media, but otherwise he probably would have been like that. And it's not that I was against those point of views, but when I came in, see, I wanted Ben Carson in 2016. So I wrote Ben Carson's name.
That's cool.
I wrote it in. And my dad was so mad because he's like, you wasted a vote. And I was like, your guy already won anyways. Why are you mad that I wrote Ben Carson? That's who I want. And we had a big argument about that.
Really?
Yeah, a really big argument about wasting your vote and it all matters. So then come 2020, my dad died in 2020, but it was already announced that Kanye was going to run for president at the time. So I told my dad I was going to vote for Kanye. And that made him so much more. He was so angry at me. I might have killed him.
Did you vote for him?
No, because Teresa told me not to. She told me to vote the right way because she knows I wasn't. It's not that not voting for Kanye is not the right way. Is that I wasn't voting for Kanye because I was like, oh, Kanye would be a great president. The whole thing was just facetious. Just I'm gonna vote for Kanye because like why not? You know?
Now, and I think I was talking to someone recently, and by the way, in 1992 it was Clinton against George W. Bush, but also Ross Perot ran as an independent, and he got quite a bit of vote. If I remember, probably in the high teens, which is unbelievable.
For an independent, yeah.
Yeah, and probably is the reason Bush lost the election. But I think the thing is I've met young people that are like, I don't want to vote. I mean, one person we both know in particular, talking to him and his wife, and they just have no interest in it.
Yeah, but I think it's a maturity thing.
I think it's yes.
Give them 6 years, and all of a sudden they're going to start to realize like the significance and the importance, and the fact that you actually have the right to do it, and it's an honor to be able to do it. You know, I was messing with Penny the other day because she came up to me when I was actually talking to Donald. I was like, "Watch, Penny's going to come up and ask us if we have filled out our voter stuff." I said, "I'm going to tell her I'm a felon and that I can't vote." He's like, don't do it. She's going to think you're being serious. I was like, well, she thinks I'm being serious. She doesn't know me well enough, you know? So she came up to me and she's like, hey, have you updated your, and I was like, oh, I can't vote. I'm a felon. And her jaw dropped and she didn't know what to say to me. But I'm saying that to say it's such an honor and a privilege that we have to have a hand in the politics. Whether you think your vote matters or it doesn't, you should exercise that right.
Yes.
But to jump back into it, you were saying that you hope that Trump kind of tends not to get into the childish acts and the debates and stuff after this. And so I wrote this. Trump claims that nothing but the protection of God saved his life on Saturday. So he doesn't take anything that he did, his Secret Service, ducking, the guy being a bad shot, nothing. He said the only reason why he's alive is because God protected him.
He said that.
That's what Trump said.
Wow. That's cool.
So whether that's true or not, okay, who am I to say one way or the other? So whether that's true or not, I think there's times in our lives where we've all felt that way, one way or another. Could it have been just mere coincidence? Could it have been circumstantial? Or could God really have been guiding the traffic, guiding the bullet, guiding, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We've all have a time in our life where we were at the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the right time or whatever, where we look back and we're like, man, if that wasn't for God, I could be X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like in my life, anytime I've had a moment like that, there's been a growing or a changing that's come out of it, an appreciation or something. So I wrote that we all have times in our lives where we feel that way. And I hope that God uses this time to teach us some things that he might have been lacking before. I hope that this experience helps him become one of the greatest presidents our country has ever seen.
That's good.
Because I think he has some qualities that are good, actually a lot of qualities that are good and are excellent in presidential candidacy. But he also has, prior to Saturday, some personality traits that just don't make him likable. And I've heard a few people say, like, I have a friend who is kind of independent, you know, and I asked him about Trump, and he's like, the reason why I just won't vote for him is because, like, I can't imagine just sitting down having a drink with the guy. It would bug me. Like he irritates me the way he talks to people or whatever. And that's really important to me versus someone like Obama, who's very charismatic and outgoing. And he's like, you know, I can imagine just like going out and playing golf with Obama for 8 hours and not having like it not being a boring or a non-fun experience. And so to some people, that's important. Now for me, I don't necessarily have to like my leaders as long as they're leading the country in the right direction and it benefits my personal life. That I'm too far down the scale to have a personal relationship with Donald Trump. But for some people, they have that is important to them. They want to look at someone and be like, oh yeah, I can invite him to my house, my backyard barbecue or something like that. By the way, Trump, you're invited to Christmas.
Yeah, come on over. You can bring your whole family.
Yeah.
Well, so here's what I'm kind of talking about. So 2 days after the assassination attempt, Donald Trump put this on Truth Social. As we move forward in uniting our nation after the horrific events on Saturday, the dismissal of the lawless indictment in Florida should be just the first step because they dismissed a case against him, followed quickly by the dismissal of all the witch hunts. You see what I mean? Like he's already starting the rhetoric again.
Yeah.
The January 6th hoax in Washington, D.C., the Manhattan DA's zombie case, the New York AG's scam, fake claims about a woman I never met, as they took photos from decades ago. And then he talks about remember when they indicted him, they were indicting him over a call with the Ukraine president. And he says, let's see, with her, then her husband does not count. And the Georgia perfect phone call charges, that's when he was said to have made a phone call where he wanted votes given back to him. The Democrat Justice Department coordinated with all these political attacks, which are an election interference conspiracy against Joe Biden's political opponent, me. Let us come together to end all weaponization of our justice system and make America great again. Now, there may be some truth in all that, but the problem is 2 days after your life was almost taken and a man loses his life and other people are injured, this is personal stuff that Trump's mad about. If he would just let God work it out, that's what I think of the assassination attempt. If he lets God intervene, his life would be protected, which I think it has been. But to keep doing this kind of stuff,
you're bringing that to the surface now.
Yeah, and to me, if he's really sensitive to the Holy Spirit, at some point he's got to stop with I've got to win. I've got to win.
Well, I think he's obviously somebody with a lot of life experience, but I tend to believe he's a baby Christian at best because he doesn't really walk that, he doesn't spark me. He says a lot of Christian things, but he doesn't really spark me as somebody who's connected with the Holy Ghost or
not the way we understand.
Yeah, or has Jesus living in his heart in the sense of like, and don't get me wrong, me and you mess up. We say things we shouldn't say. We do things we shouldn't do. But I think that I think it could advance him further, just learning a little bit of humbleness and a little bit of peace and a little bit.
And it may be that he continues to highlight this stuff because there is currently a lot of people in prison because of the January 6th nonsense. And maybe there were some people legit that were doing wrong things there, but overall...
it's like this. There's I don't know the exact number, but I know there's thousands of people in federal prison across the country right now for marijuana charges because marijuana was illegal when they got arrested. But marijuana is legal now.
Which you would think they'd just let them go.
I mean, I would. Not that I'm a proponent of marijuana, but I'm just saying but people keep bringing that up. It's like the old thing. You keep bringing up old things. You keep bringing up old things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think that's the whole point. Maybe he's doing this because he realizes there's been a lot of unjust stuff done to other people along with himself, but he does make it personal at times.
Do you think if somebody came to the church, to our church, DP City Church, and was offended from something that happened 15 years ago, that their complaint would be valid today? Even if the person that offended them was still here on campus?
No.
Because why? People change, right? Things change.
Well, and as Christians, I think the one thing Trump does have to learn is that there's got to come a point where Jesus says, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. I mean, think about that statement. And I think there comes a time as a leader, and I understand he's not a pastor, but if he's claiming he's a Christian, you're Christian first.
Yeah.
And listen, I love Trump. I'll say it plainly on here. I'm going to vote for Trump, but he needs to tone it down a bit. I think especially after this, because when you have this much influence that he has, these kind of things do bring attention anytime you're at a rally, and then you endanger other people. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's a lot more behind this shooter. There's a lot of weird stuff around the whole situation. How did a guy get a ladder, climb up to a roof, was able to lay down
with a rifle
and get ready for we both know, Kyle, for that to happen in broad daylight,
there's no way.
Yeah, something's off. But beyond that, but I think the other thing is Trump usually is very smart about embedding. He sends a message that has another message. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's definitely a chess player.
The one thing I really thought was a funny meme where it said, "Who are you voting for?" And it shows Trump right after he got shot, and his face is all bloody, and he has his fist up, and then it shows Biden falling off the bike. I was like, well,
and that's the whole thing. So what I think when I say embedded, when you bring up the January 6th stuff, what all was happening just before that? Those BLM riots where they were burning towns down.
So I posted a picture of Washington burned down, destroyed, and then a desk inside of where did they rush? The Capitol building?
Yeah, I think so.
The Capitol building that was like flipped over, right? Mm-hmm. And I posted the Democrat Party wants you to believe that one of these is peaceful protesting and the other one is domestic terrorism. Yep. Which one? And to me, they're both wrong. Okay, I'll tell you that. Like, for me, it was both wrong. The desk should not have gotten flipped over, and Washington or Oregon, wherever it was Oregon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, shouldn't have been burned down. But
if you compare it, I mean, you think about, let's take Portland, for example. Portland, where they had the Chaz, remember? Mm-hmm. They had their little area and all that. That was a complete mess. People's lives were in danger. They were using, weapons, all kind of stuff. And, we know what happened in Minnesota. I don't agree with what happened to George Floyd, the way the officer handled it. But George Floyd is not a hero for being a drug addict. I don't think it was right the way he died. But to lift up someone like George Floyd and compare him to Martin Luther King is complete nonsense.
Or even Chris Kyle. You know who he is?
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
American Sniper. I've seen comparisons between them two, and I'm like, that's really...
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah. But I think now, typically, the left more hangs on those things. So I say all that to say I believe Trump uses rhetoric like this sometimes to say, man, come on, look at this. We got people that walked into the Capitol building on January the 6th and just walked around as in prison. And we have BLM and Antifa members that burnt down cities.
And they're praised as heroes.
Destroyed black businesses of people that had independent businesses that are gone forever. But the Democrats, a lot of times, unfortunately, or the liberals, typically look at that as going, yeah, but it furthers our cause. Whereas Republicans are normally not like that. But I think Trump now, with this assassination attempt, and I think that there's more to it, and I think that whoever's behind it didn't succeed.
Right.
And I think you talking about a red wave, I think it's going to be a red storm, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be massive.
So I have a lot here.
Okay,
but
go ahead.
The one thing that I wanted to say is, as a Christian, because I like to tie it into our lives as pastors and stuff, and I'm a youth pastor, you're the associate pastor here. As Christians, should we be surprised when things like this happen? Because I've seen a lot of people very surprised, And I don't think we should. I mean, it's in the Bible. There was multiple assassination attempts on David, right? Saul tried to kill David multiple times because he was his political
That's right.
enemy.
Throwing spear at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could look at that as David was coming in to take the presidency, or it's a little different.
But who else was with David? God.
Yeah, God. Yeah.
So what did they try to do to Jesus? Herod put out an edict. Every child 2 years and younger is to be killed. What did they do to Noah? Not Noah, Moses. They put an edict out.
Yeah.
Every Hebrew child is to be killed.
And so I'm not sitting here saying that Trump is God's elect. I'm not a prophet or anything like that. But what I am saying is we should not be surprised when someone who stands up for Jesus Christ and faith, and even though he's off sometimes, he's very much, claims to be a Christian and shares Christian values from his stands, from his podium, not just in his personal life, but in his professional life, is attempted to be assassinated, because that's what the devil does.
Yeah, I believe Trump has definitely brought a lot of attention to himself, spiritually speaking, because of some of the stands. But then he does things like, did you watch the debate between him and Biden?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember when the abortion pill come up?
Mm-hmm.
Remember Trump's answer? Well, he said
it should be in the hands of each individual
state. And then he goes, I don't really want to say one way or the other because I got to get votes.
Yeah.
The worst.
Yeah, if you say that,
response, because what are they going to think? Oh, he's for abortion.
Yeah.
So what he should have just said is, no, I'm not for the abortion pill. It's handled by the states, but I'm not personally for it. But what he did is, in some ways, conservatives looked at that as a betrayal. Yeah. And he openly admitted, even though he rails against politicians, he wants votes.
He was playing the politician game.
That's the whole thing, is that at some point, if you're going to use rhetoric against someone else, you have to not be the same person doing it.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm going to vote for Trump. I don't think Biden for a second serves Jesus Christ. I don't think Kamala Harris does. And the Democratic platform, I'm not saying Democratic people. I think there's probably a lot of great Democratic people, and there's probably a lot of Republicans that are not good people. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the Democratic platform, a lot of it is demonic. Mm-hmm. The transgender stuff, the gay marriage stuff, just crazy stuff that they believe in, that Republicans are more conservative in. Yeah. They believe in life. They believe in marriage between a man and a woman and all that. But I think what Trump does is he's got to be careful with that kind of stuff. And, we'll have people that listen to this that think that we're a political church and all that kind of stuff. And once again, is it biblical or is it political?
Well, I'd like to say to them, anybody who thinks that mine and your podcast, even though it's from the church platform, has anything to do with the political stance of the church building here at DP City is wrong, because this is me and you talking from our lives and our perspectives. And so we might talk about sports, we might talk about politics, we might talk about it's going to be open to any kind of conversation we want to have. That doesn't mean that necessarily, I was a Laker fan and you were a Laker fan up until LeBron James ruined it. That doesn't mean that if you come to DP City Church, you have to be a Laker fan. You know?
And even for me, even if I have disagreements on someone like LeBron James, I don't know him, but I would say he probably leans a little bit more left.
Yeah,
but
a little bit?
Yeah, probably a lot. But LeBron James is legit one of the greatest players in the NBA. I like to tease Reggie if you're out there. I mean, he still should be in the G League, but that's beside the point.
With his son?
With his son. Was Bronny getting that 2.2 points a game?
You see he's 0 for 16 from three-point range.
Oh, God, come on. Somebody's got to step in and say, what is going on here?
What is going on
It's
with
crazy.
This guy? And he didn't like our meme, by the way, the other day. He said I went too far.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
I thought it was good,
Yeah,
too.
I thought it was good. But I think that's the whole thing, is that I don't think all Democrats are bad. I don't think all Republicans are good. I do think, though, Trump, through his presidency, even though it does appear he's very much a baby Christian, and he can't always use that as an excuse. You got to grow up at some point. But the one thing with Trump is he has consistently talked about Jesus Christ, God, and we both know, like if you take Russell Brand, for example.
That's the English guy that is kind of
and he's recently had a conversion.
Yeah.
And you know yourself, you've been a Christian long enough. You can tell when someone's had a true conversion. Just everything changes.
Yeah.
They talk different. They walk different. Everything's different.
Appreciate life
Yes.
differently. Yeah.
And to me, if you're saying you're a Christian, and then in the same breath can say that I'm fine with abortion and killing babies, or I'm fine with someone believing they can switch their gender at a moment's notice, something's off.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that maybe you're still not saved, but something's off if you stay there. If you say you're for gay relationships, and you're saying you're a Christian, but you're living with one man's living with another man, and you justify it, something's off. Because Jesus, one time when he healed someone, before they went away, he said to him, "Go and sin no more unless something worse comes upon you." He knew that they would sin again. But when you read it in the original language, what it was saying is, don't go back to the same pattern of living. If you do, it'll get worse.
It's going to get worse, yeah.
You ever notice in your life, if you go back to something you used to do that wasn't good for you, it gets worse much quicker.
Yeah.
And so to me...
Well, I think because you don't have that slow burn.
Yes.
You if you're going to go back, like if you...
You've already been there.
You've been clean for how long again?
1989, so for 35 years.
35 years. If you were to slip up right now, it wouldn't be like how it was in high school, where it was just like, "Hey, I have a bowl. You want to take one hit?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, this feels great." Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be that whole experience. You already know all that. You already know what it is. So it would probably be like diving into the deep end. You'd probably just go for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no...
Well, when I got saved and had this dramatic conversion and stopped using meth and all this stuff, and as I said before, I used for about 5 years, a little over 5 years. So I get saved, had a dramatic conversion. I'm clean for almost 3 years. And then I go on a binge of meth and pot, marijuana for 60 days. I get clean, meth, pot, and crack cocaine for 60 days. And I'd done cocaine before, but I'd never done crack. And then I got clean for 10 months and then went on another binge of meth and pot and eventually drinking some too. And then I went into treatment, and now I've been clean since then. But when I went back those 2 times, I accelerated much quicker.
Yeah.
Like, plus you have the guilt of going, oh, well.
I already messed up.
What's most Christians do? I'm already fornicating.
Might as well.
I might as well. I'm already beating my wife. Oh, well, I might as well.
Might as well hit the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we both know that the Holy Spirit gives us discernment. It goes, no, you can't live in a pattern of sin and justify it. I think that's the thing now. I see so many Christians that align with sin, and they're okay with that. So to me, it's beyond Donald Trump or Joe Biden. If you're truly saying you serve Jesus Christ, something should have changed in your heart, and you should be for life.
Yeah.
And love, but I don't mean love like there's never justice involved. Because if someone comes up and punches one of my daughters, justice is going to be involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's the thing, is that people tend to paint Jesus a certain way. So like when you said you heard that Trump was shot, how did you feel? I know you mentioned a little bit, but how did it make you feel? Like, did you feel like, oh, I can see how this happened?
Yeah, I'm sorry if this sounds inappropriate or if it sounds insensitive, but being the kind of person who loves history the way that I love history, my immediate thoughts and reaction was more to the historical moment of, wow, this happened in my lifetime. I can't believe there was an attempted assassination on a president in my lifetime. I never thought that would happen, regardless if it was Trump or Biden or Obama or whoever. And then I know that there was like an attempted assassination on Bush in like Ukraine or something like that with like a grenade. But
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's quite the same, you know.
Remember when the dude threw the shoe at him?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was more behind that.
I mean, these dudes, but that's not the same as
it's not like someone taking a shot at you.
And you got it on camera. Like you I don't know if you realize, but you see him get shot, even though it doesn't really look like that. And he grabs his ear because it whizzed his ear. And like the historical event of it is where my immediate pull was. And then I started watching the videos, and I was more inclined to what happened, who was the shooter.
Mm.
So I was less concerned about President Trump and more concerned about who was the shooter. And then when I found out it was a 20-year-old kid, I was like, wow.
What
And
did you think of that?
so I did a little bit of a deep dive. I mean, obviously, Secret Service and FBI and all that have already started wiping his digital footprint and trying to cover up who he was.
And why would you want to do that?
Because they don't want to bring glory. They don't want him to become a martyr. They don't want him to become.
I see.
Yeah, they don't want him to become.
So they're trying to. Yeah.
Yeah, but his name was Thomas Matthew Crooks, and I think that's actually one of the saddest parts of this whole story. Not to take anything away from President Trump, but the fact that a 20-year-old kid felt so lost and hopeless in this world. And there's a lot of weird things with him about being a registered Republican, but also being a Democrat donor. And when I say Democrat donor, it was all of $15, but still, you have to really believe in something to go out of your way to give $15 to it. You know?
Plus, I think there's videos of him railing against Republicans.
Yeah, so there's a lot of weird things with him. You know, a lot of people said that he was kind of a lone wolf at school. The only thing he really liked was shooting, and he kept all 4 years of high school. Apparently, he tried out for the rifle team because he grew up in Pennsylvania. Said we don't even have that here, you know. But apparently, there's rifle teams in Pennsylvania, and all 4 years he didn't make the varsity team. He was told he was a bad shot. Stuff like that. And I think one of the saddest parts about the whole story is like, what happened to him in his life that drove him to this breaking point? Because you don't just wake up and decide I'm going to go take a life. It's a slow burn. Usually something happens, you know. And a lot of times those impulsive times where you do hurt someone, is someone who's like connected to you closely. So, you know, you have a school bully who pushes you into a locker and locks you in there. So the next day you bring your gun and shoot him. Like, that's a intimate exchange. Obviously, he never had an intimate exchange with President Trump. And so I really like want to know like what drove him to that point. And was there anyone who ever in his life ever spoke life into him, ever introduced him to Jesus, did he ever go to a youth group? Did he ever get the chance? Did anybody ever see what God, because no matter how his life ended, God did design him for something. God did give him gifts. God did have a purpose for him. And he might have went a different route, you know, and maybe not walked in those. But did anyone ever try to pull that out of him? And that's really where my heart went after the whole historical significance of the event. I already saw that President Trump was fine. Had President Trump's head get blown off, my mindset probably would have went somewhere else, you know.
I think the crazier part was people that thought it was staged, and a man lost his life.
Like President Trump's campaign staged the whole thing.
Yeah, and that he had broken a red one of those things that show fake blood and all that. But so Trump's going to allow another man to lose his life and other people to be injured.
And a kid.
Yeah. So saying all that, to me, the strangest part is when there was people on the ground, and this is all on video, pointing up and telling law enforcement officials around there, he's right there. This is before he took the shot. Did someone get to this 20-year-old beforehand and it was all set up? It's very odd.
So I saw one, I'm trying to remember what show, because I'm growing into my political life, you know, and I saw one show, it was ABC News, so it definitely had a bent on it. I don't remember who it was, but the reason why, apparently Secret Service knew he was there. And the reason why action wasn't taken further is because he was outside of the soft border. So you have your hard containment zone, you have your soft containment zone, and then outside of that is just regular area. So whatever they set up as their hard containment, their soft containment, that's on them, right? And so think of like the Republican National Convention. Their hard containment zone is the building itself. The soft containment zone is outside. Well, technically, you're not, like, people could be it's open carry in Wisconsin, so people can walk around the soft containment zone with their ARs, their shotguns, their pistols, and nobody's gonna question.
Going to do anything about
And
it.
they can't.
Yeah,
Legally, they can't. It doesn't matter
because
if
of
they're Secret Service.
constitutional rights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, from what I heard, or what I saw on the show, is the reason why he was able, and this could be excuses. I don't know, but the reason why he was able to scale a building with a rifle is because he was outside the soft containment zone. So they legally couldn't take any action on him until he was proven threat. So even if you're aiming down sights, you're not proven threat until you pull a trigger. Now, is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a guy on Fox, and I don't even really watch Fox anymore. I think Suzanne had flipped it on, and it was a guy that's like an expert in shooting and all that. And he said, with the way guns are now and sights and lasers and all that, he said, I could teach you in 5 minutes to hit your target 9 out of 10 times. Yeah. So he goes, it's a miracle that Trump turned when he did, because it appears that bullet would have hit him right in the temple, or at least in the head, probably similar to like John F. Kennedy. So for me though, when you see video, when the other thing was a police officer had climbed the ladder
and fell down, they said?
Well, I don't know. He may have fell down, but he climbed the ladder, engaged, and the shooter looked at him. This is the story, and said, "Get out of here." So where was the breakdown? Like, how I heard that from the time the Secret Service knew about him and the shot was taken by this guy, according to them, that was 86 seconds. That's a long time, man.
Yeah, you can't pencil, like, I get it, you can't shoot him until he's proven to be a threat, but you can't radio into somebody who's next to President Donald Trump and says, hey, we need to get him out of here.
So I think you just hit on the point. Were they able to, as Secret Service, not to shoot him until he did something?
Yeah, I don't think think they're allowed to shoot or make that kind of call until it's proven that they're a threat. And
so I could see right there. I mean, it's weird because if you see a guy with a gun, and those snipers had to be looking through those.
Well, here's another important distinction that people don't realize is that when you become a president, part of your retirement benefits is that you have your own Secret Service detail for the rest of your life. So those people that are around Trump, those are Trump's guys. Okay, and I think there's one lady. Those are Trump's Secret Service people. They
know him.
That's him.
Yeah.
The snipers are different Secret Service detail from the government. When there's political campaigns and stuff like that, the president and people running for president, the government supplies Secret Service agents to help make sure everyone stays safe. So those guys are different than the Secret Service agents that are right there with Trump. Those guys answer to different people. It's like a different, like department.
Yeah.
So they're all Secret Service agents, but different department of who they answer to. And so I don't know, maybe there wasn't a clear line of communication between the two.
Well, and I heard too that the building that the guy was on when he took the shot, because you're right, they say it was outside the zone, but they said the Secret Service had swept that building before the event, but local police was responsible for that area. Yeah. That's why on the video you see people on the ground going, hey, he's right there.
Yeah, who is that guy? Yeah.
Like, now, why nobody did anything? But like you said, if you're in a state that's open carry, but still, if you're laying on a building and the president...
You're looking down sights. Yeah.
Something's... So...
Well, there's the motive thing, because there's conspiracy theories about, was Biden's camp behind it? Was Trump's camp behind it? There's the motive of maybe he was independent and
could have been
just didn't like Trump, or maybe he just felt a loss for life and wanted to be significant, wanted to die with some kind of purpose and importance. Like, there's so many ideas that we'll never really actually get to the bottom of it. Even if Biden's camp hypothetically is responsible for it, you're not going to find that out.
Well, think about this. John F. Kennedy Sr. was assassinated 61 years ago, and we still talk about, was it really only Lee Harvey Oswald, or was someone else involved?
Yeah.
Is it the grassy knoll, or is it another shooter, or 3 shooters, or 6 shooters?
Did you happen to see President Biden's interview last night during the National Convention? He
The
did.
only thing I seen was the clip of the bullseye thing.
Oh, I didn't say crosshairs. I
Yeah.
said a bullseye. Come on, dude.
I know.
But
But see, that's the same thing. Biden's doing the same rhetoric that
That's
Trump.
what I was just
They
gonna
play
say.
this game.
if you watch that Biden interview, he is so aggressive to the interviewee, who I don't even know who he is, but
Yeah.
he's like really mean to him.
Yeah, and that interviewer, he's had a long history of being in the media, so he's got clout and everything. But I think that's the thing, that the rhetoric never stops on either side.
Yeah.
You know, and I think Biden and them are just upset that Trump didn't get killed.
So in all times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's been 7 assassinations / assassination attempts on president/president candidates. How many of those you think were Republican? How many of those you think were Democrat?
I'm guessing they are all Republican.
Well, John F. Kennedy was a Democrat.
Oh, that's right. He was Democrat. I forgot.
6 Republican assassination / assassination attempts and 1 Democrat.
Right.
So you have Abraham Lincoln, James A. Garfield, William McKinley, John F. Kennedy. Those were all successful assassinations.
See, and I heard too. Okay, do you have the years that they were done?
No, I didn't write that down.
See, I heard that they were happening in the even decades every 20 years.
I'm going to have
So-
to look that up now.
Lincoln was shot in 1865, right? Who'd you say was the next one?
James A. Garfield.
I don't know when it was, but I'd heard this thing.
He would have been the 80s, right? 1880s.
Yeah, and then whoever was the next one.
William McKinley was early 1900s. It was
So-
like 1905 because
Okay.
that's when Theodore Roosevelt took
Yeah,
over.
they were this making the point that everything was an even,
So there's
like
a
every
gap,
20 years.
but there's a 60-year gap between William McKinley and JFK. Because
And who did you say after McKinley was?
That would have been Theodore Roosevelt.
That's
because
right.
Theodore Roosevelt was his vice president.
So forget about that theory.
Well, no, it lines up except for the 60-year gap between.
It's the 60 years. So forget about that. I strike that from my conversation.
But then the 3 unsuccessfuls were Theodore Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump.
And there's been a big gap between Reagan and Trump.
Well, that was 80s, so 40
40
years.
something, yeah. So unless there was something that happened.
Well, the President Bush grenade thing in Ukraine or whatever. I don't know the details on that, but it's not the same as what
Was
we're
9/11.
experiencing. 9/11, yeah, 2000.
2001. Was that assassination? I don't know.
Assassination attempt on the country.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I guess it's all, but it's if you just look at simply someone shooting at the president, you're right. It's been 40 years. So
Who's your favorite president of all time?
probably Reagan, but I was so young at the time. But everybody loved. When I say everybody, there's going to be people I'm sure listening to this, or you could go talk to that hated Reagan. I loved Reagan, and Trump probably now. I love Trump. I thought George Bush Sr. or George Bush Jr. was odd and would say really stupid things, but he was the president for 8 years.
Teresa's family, it's kind of funny, not to out them or anything, but they loved George Bush, but
Junior or senior?
Jr.,
Yeah.
but then like not necessarily fans of Donald Trump.
So
but
how?
it's the same beliefs, you know.
So who's your favorite?
My favorite president of all time is Teddy Roosevelt. Now,
Teddy Roosevelt.
obviously, I wasn't alive with him. I was born in 1992, and I think he died in 1918.
Mm.
So obviously, there's quite a big difference between our age. But just reading, I'm obviously a history nut. I love history. Just reading about who he was as a person, I've always
Because he was a military guy too,
and
right?
that's one thing that's really important to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just telling Teresa that the other day. Like, I miss when my presidents were like, they had some military experience, you know, like even if it was 8 years or 4 years or something, but like some kind of like if you're going to send people into war, you should know what war feels like. You know?
You know, Bush Sr., do you know a lot about him?
Air Force, I think.
Yeah. And also, what was he before? He was the head of the CIA.
Yeah.
You know, so you think this dude knew
See,
a lot.
I like that.
See,
I like that a lot.
I think with Trump, it's interesting when you look at Trump that Trump was embedded with the Democrats. until he ran for president. I think that's why they started hating him afterwards.
Because he was in Hollywood.
And they loved him.
Yeah.
How many people wanted to be famous people wanted to be on The Apprentice?
You know how spiteful people are that once he ran for president, they wanted his scene taken out of Home Alone 2. It's a 3-second scene where Kevin McAllister just walks past him and he just kind of like looks at him and Trump says some like one line.
Yeah.
Like, hey, kid, or some, I don't even know what it is. But it's not like it's facetious. It's not like it's nasty. It's nothing. It's just like whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And people were really, really hate him so much that they're like, we should remove that scene off of Netflix. It's like, get out of here, you know? But I want to go back to the reason why I love Theodore Roosevelt. Because he was a man. Like, he was a president, but he was a man. Like, he served in war. He had his own secret, like, Navy SEALs, the Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders who fought, like, the Spanish War in Cuba all by themselves, and he owned a farm, and he was a big game hunter, and he was like very
cool.
manly, but he also appreciated academia, and he had I think he had a law degree from Harvard, and he was homeschooled, yeah, and so I really connect with him because I love academia, I love learning things, I love researching, I love knowing things about things, even if it's not applicable to my life, you know. But I also like manly stuff. I like working on my cars. I like camping. I like going and playing airsoft. I don't like being a sissy. Sorry, babe.
You like, yeah.
You know.
You're a manly man.
I like to be a manly man. And so I said that because Donald Trump's vice president selection, J.D. Vance, reminds me a lot of a modern day Teddy Roosevelt.
Was he in military?
Yeah, in the Marines.
I love the movie about him.
I didn't know there was a movie. I know he wrote a book.
Yeah, they made a movie. Man, you got to watch the movie.
What's it called?
Hillbilly.
Oh, it's the same name as the book.
Same as the book, I believe.
I'm going to have to watch that.
Yeah, and well, go ahead.
Well,
it's a great movie.
I really like him as a political candidate to run with Donald Trump because I think he brings a certain kind of masculinity back into the forefront of the nation where men were men. And not to say that men supersede women or are above women. You know me, I don't believe that I am man, women bend knee and listen to me. That's not what I mean. But I think that men have a certain role to play in our country and in our households. And I want to see that come back. I want to see where men are proud to take care of their households. Men are proud to take care of their families. Men are happy to supply and serve and take care of them around them and take care of their communities and not so much like, poor PMI, nobody ever helps me, and you know what I mean?
And from that standpoint, Trump is a man's man.
Yeah.
I mean, what was he known for on The Apprentice? And I know it was his show.
Firing people.
Yeah. And I believe I couldn't stand Trump when he was on The Apprentice. Could not stand him. I thought he was arrogant and all this kind of stuff. But when I think it was probably one of the first debates he did in 2015 when he was in the Republican primary. I was like, man, this dude says everything we all want to say, but won't say it out loud.
Yeah.
And some things he said that was reckless, but I realized he'd go toe to toe with those Republican candidates.
And wasn't scared.
Not a bit.
Yeah.
And
he destroyed, forgive me if I messed up his name, because I didn't even hear about this guy. No, Teddy Cruz, I think.
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz?
Yeah, and
Trump destroyed him. You don't even hear about him no more.
And they're actually friends now. Ted Cruz.
Well, yeah, because they see the light. That's the thing. J.D. Vance was not a
Trump fan
in 2016. Another reason why I really like him, I really like J.D. Vance, is because he grew up as a Christian, and his family, his mom was a druggie. He had multiple father figures. I think I read like four dads, 4 stepdads.
I think that's part of what, in the movie they kind of.
And his grandparents didn't have a lot of money, so he grew up poor. So it was a Christian household, but he went through a little bit of a journey where he was an atheist when he was in the military and in college. And it was like, dude, God wasn't there. He didn't help me through my childhood. Like I had everything I've ever had, I had to work for, I had to do. Now he's a practicing Catholicism, which doesn't mean he doesn't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. It's just, there's more ritualistic standings with that. But I love the fact that he's somebody who's gone full circle. He's somebody that has had a past and a childhood just like us. He's not some kind of trust fund baby. He's not some kind of like, my parents were politicians, so I'm going to be a politician. He's somebody that has really worked and grind and gotten everything that he has is gotten because he worked for it. Nothing was handed to him.
Well, a lot of people will say that Trump's dad, I think, gave him $1 million or something like that. I don't know exact backstory. But Trump had to take that $1 million and build a real estate empire and far surpassed anything his dad ever had. But I think it's the same thing.
Like, that's good. That's a good amount of seed money, but you can lose that quick.
In New York City?
Yeah.
You couldn't afford 2 apartments. You couldn't afford 1 apartment for $1 million.
Yeah, it's a good amount of seed money. Like, that's awesome. I'm sure a lot of people are like, man, well, if my dad gave me $1 million. But you could also, if you're not wise and you don't make the right moves, you could lose that quick.
And Trump's openly stated that he realizes he was in good schools and his dad kind of gave him a hand up. But he also had a brother that ended up being a severe alcoholic and died from that.
And Trump, no alcohol, right?
From what I understand, Trump's never done drugs, never smoked, never drank. So I think if you look at Trump and the kids that he's raised, who's all adults now, they're hard workers. They don't live off their dad. They're just impressive people. His son, Barron, I guarantee you that kid someday will be the president for 8 years. Mm. If we're still around as a country and Jesus Christ hasn't come back.
Barron's his youngest.
He's the youngest. Yeah. So it would take him years. But, man, that kid's just got something on him.
That kid is 13, I think.
You mean Barron?
Yeah.
No, I think he's like 18 now.
He's 18. So the earliest you can possibly run for president is 35.
Yeah.
The youngest there ever has been that has run, I think, is 41 and 1. And then there's been a couple, like Teddy Roosevelt was once the youngest president because he was vice president, and William McKinley got killed, and so he got moved in. So same thing. He was the 42. Same thing. J.D. Vance is 42. And this is something that I love to see as a young person. But also, I'm sorry, but 75 to 80-year-old people should not be running companies, should not be running the country, should not be running. I'm not saying they shouldn't be working because they have valuable information. They have valuable experience that they can hand down to people, but they're also a little bit compromised because they're older. And
whereas Vance
need more rest.
Could be the vice president for the next 4 years because Trump can't run anymore after this. And then Vance could be president.
I love the fact that Trump decided to run with somebody who's on the younger side so that he can teach him and show him things. And then we're back to having a strong, younger president instead of, older, declining.
I never thought about it that way. You're right. Well, in like CNN, Van Jones, do you know who Van Jones is?
Mm-mm.
Van Jones is a African-American political commentator that just hates Trump. He'll try to act like he doesn't sometimes and that he's fair. As soon as J.D. Vance was nominated on CNN, Van Jones goes, he's a white nationalist, and he's even more dangerous than Trump because he's articulate, and he'll be able to sell this destructive message in a way that Trump never could. And I was like, oh, my goodness.
Yeah, he's scared. They're scared of him.
Yeah.
They're scared of him. And you know what? But the thing is he also he's a little more open-minded. Like, he's a Republican, but he is for unions. Thinks unions are one of the greatest things in the workforce, helps protect the workers.
I think unions are good.
So, you know what I mean? Yeah. Oh, I was part of a union.
Yeah.
My dad was the president of the Cement Masons Local 500 for 3 years. So I think unions are good.
I do too.
That's where, he blends that line of the left and the right. And obviously the most important, we know this, it's not the most important, but the most up in your face policies are abortion, gay marriage, and gun control. Those are the three where the most fights happen between.
And now gun control come up again
because
the assassination attempt.
Yeah. But J.D. Vance's stance on gay marriage is that although he doesn't believe in it, he's not going to come in office and start breaking families apart. So I think that's something that some people might, lean into.
And the thing is that I don't agree with gay marriage, but if they've already been allowed to have kids, do you go in and start grabbing those kids away from them?
Yeah, you don't start just breaking families apart.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue, I think, then.
And the same thing with illegal immigration. when you've allowed so many people into the country and people who have started to establish themselves in communities and have had kids and have gotten jobs, even if it's not tax paying jobs, but house cleaning or making fruit or whatever they're doing to their community, you don't just come in and start ripping people out and sending them away. Now, if you're not a positive member of the community and you're selling drugs and you're raping and you're doing crimes or you're just hand-waggling on the side of the road, that's a different story in my opinion.
Yeah.
But if you've already established yourself as a member of a community, your kids are going to school and you're a positive member of the community, just give them their papers.
Yeah.
Don't allow more in, but these ones are already here.
Yeah, it's tough because I'm sure there'd be some people listening to this going, "Oh, so you are for gay marriage?" Well, I'm not for gay marriage, but whenever kids are involved, and now, for good or bad, our government is set up, and a lot of laws are in place that 2 men can adopt a baby or 2 women can. I don't think that's the best position for them to be in. I think the best position is supposed to be a man and a woman that are a healthy relationship, because there's a lot of heterosexuals that have bad relationships.
Yeah.
But I don't ever want to see kids suffer. So if kids have been raised for a while and all of a sudden you become president, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to take every kid out of a gay home or out of every lesbian home or whatever. Well, then you're playing God then.
Yeah.
And I think because if we go down that road, so what about every heterosexual parent that is abusive that we don't know about? But if you find out, some cases those are removed because of domestic abuse.
I'm from one of those, you know what I mean? Like, obviously my mom divorced my dad when I was 2, my birth father when I was 2.
Because of that?
But it was part of it. It was huge domestic violence, and he would do weird things like put drugs in her drinks without telling her and stuff like that, and like huge domestic violence. And then all the way up until I was old enough to stand up for myself. I remember getting the snot smacked out of me because I broke a glass because I just dropped the glass. Like, accidents happen. And as a dad now, I would get frustrated with my kid if they dropped the plate, but I wouldn't smack the crap out of them. I would just pick up the glass and clean it up and move on, go buy a new plate,
Well, I think the other thing is too is a nation, or like if you take Sodom and Gomorrah, and I haven't done a lot of research on it, but have read the story several times in the book of Genesis. If you take Sodom and Gomorrah, what made it get to a point where it was so bad that Abraham says to God, if I find 50 righteous, would you save the city? And he goes all the way down, I believe, to 1. It's either 10 or 1.
Yeah.
There wasn't even that.
Do you think it was just like sexual immorality, or do you think like there was just all drugs and drinking and just?
Oh, I'm sure there was a lot of things. I think it was just, but I think the story of Lot shows you, because they go to Lot's house and they want what they think is 2 men. It's 2 angels that are inside, and they want to have sex with them, which means they had already had sex with each other so often
that
it's nothing.
Yeah.
Then Lot, who was compromised, Lot says, I'll give you my virgin daughters. So to me, it really shows that once you get into a compromised situation, even as a believer, Lot would have been considered a quote unquote a believer. When you get into a compromised situation, you'll even start to do things that you would have never done before. But Lot had started to get more comfortable with culture than he did Christ. So what he did is he's like, I'll just take my daughters. And eventually, the men of the city are blinded and all that kind of stuff, and they leave. But it just shows you that that place had to be severely corrupt.
Yeah.
So I look at it, and even when you're talking about a gay couple or a lesbian couple adopting kids, and we know that's happening quite a bit. But spiritually speaking, what's being passed to these kids?
Right.
Because you don't have, I didn't say that God created them male and female and a man leaves his mom and
clings
dad.
to his wife.
Yeah. God said it. So when you have compromised situations where kids are being raised, could that couple love them? Yes. But what's being passed down to them, spiritually speaking? And I think now you're seeing a nation where all of a sudden that it's not unusual for teenagers to believe just whacked out things.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone would have told you maybe even 10 years ago, but let's just say when you were in high school, what year did you graduate?
2010.
That you could switch genders.
Probably would have been like, what are you talking about?
And don't you think they probably would have put you in a mental institution?
Yeah. If somebody came up to me, like that wasn't, sex change operations wasn't like an unheard of thing in 2010, but it was kind of a taboo thing.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying.
And if I wasn't, it wasn't really, I don't think anybody in high school, I know that there's some people that were experimenting and being gay or bisexual, but I don't really remember anyone in my high school thinking they were a chick or thinking they were a dude. They might dress a certain way because of their sexual preference, which obviously was a sin, but not to the extent of being like, I'm a chick or I'm a dude, you know?
Hey, back when there's things that you can find where Obama's talking and was against gay marriage.
Yeah.
At one point, and then changed, and then celebrated gay marriage in 2015 when it was, I think it was 2015, the summer of 2015, that it was made legal. So it wasn't that all of a sudden he become enlightened. He just embraced sin. And once you embrace sin, if you do that long enough, after a while you'll go, but they're such good people.
Yeah.
Well, okay. But some people would have said the Philistines were good people in the Bible, but the Philistines become the enemy of God and against God's people. And a lot of times Philistines were completely...
Well, a good person is not necessarily a God person.
Yes. And I think that's, once again, when you look at our nation and going back to, I know we're talking about this assassination attempt, but really what's happening is Christ is being assassinated in people's lives and they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going, you know what? I'd rather just get along and go along than stand for truth. And sometimes the Bible does say, you know, try to be at peace with all people. But if you get to a point where you're compromising and saying, I'm not going to stand up for God, and it causes turmoil for you, and you won't accept that, I'd rather someone get mad at me for telling them the truth than not telling them the truth.
So do you think, obviously I know your stance on Vegas and, you know, my stance on Vegas. So what do you think about the people who say Vegas is a modern day Sodom and Gomorrah? Do you think they're just off their rocker?
I think some of it. I mean, does Vegas offer a lot of stuff that's probably not good? Yes, 100%.
But then you have like Jab and Chavez there.
You have that, and you have hotels that have roller coasters and swimming pools and all that. So I think anytime you compromise, do I believe that some of the people that probably own those businesses are compromised? Yeah. I mean, Vegas started because of the mafia.
Yeah.
That's why it started. Bugsy Malone and all that in the middle of the desert.
Middle of the desert.
So whenever you start out compromised, that's going to stay there until that spirit is broken. So what you have had now is you have a lot of great churches that have popped up in Las Vegas. And I think there's good people, great people that work for casinos, probably some of them that own the casinos. But I think when you start to compromise and your agenda becomes to get people drunk so they'll gamble more and spend more. And then you can throw some cheap meals or some free shows their way, but they're okay with that. And, you know, then you have the strippers and all that kind of stuff. So I think anytime you compromise, it's going to have an effect.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Vegas 40 times because I worked over there as a medical salesman. My kids have been to Vegas. They love going to Las Vegas, and there's a lot of cool things about Vegas, but there is also a lot of things that are dangerous. And I think anytime you go into those environments, you know, some people would say as a Christian, you should never walk in a casino. Well, if you feel conviction about that, okay, that's good. But for me, I never had a problem with it because as a medical salesman, I was booked into casinos all the time.
Well, with that logic, though, and we have to close here
Okay.
soon, but with that logic, though, is as a Christian, you shouldn't walk into Walmart because they
Stater
sell alcohol.
Stater
They
Brothers.
they sell cigarettes.
Yeah. So, you know, it's tough now because, and I think it's always been hard. Sin's always been around. It was around when Jesus was here. In fact, I heard it one time that they believe around the temple during the time of Jesus, it wasn't unusual for up to 3,000 prostitutes to be hanging around in the local area trying to solicit.
That's crazy.
And so is the issue the prostitutes, or is the issues these guys coming in saying that they serve God, giving into it? See, I can walk in a casino, but am I going to bend to culture?
Yeah.
I had to travel many times to Las Vegas. I had to travel all over the country as a medical salesman, that Suzanne wasn't around, that I could have easily compromised.
Right.
Now, no one in the natural would have known, but God would have known. My conscience would have known, and eventually I think I would have gotten caught.
So sorry, go ahead.
So I love my wife, and I never wanted to put myself in those situations. So when I went and worked. When I got done working, I went and ate dinner, worked out, and went to bed. And then when I would get up in the morning or at night, I would listen to sermons because I knew the temptations were everywhere. And if you're around that long enough, you'll give into it. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that.
So let's end this one on a semi-positive note.
Okay.
Obviously, you've been a lot more places than I've been. If you had one recommendation for a family to go on vacation, out of all the places that you've been, where's the one place you would send a family?
Las Vegas.
What is it? Vegas?
I love Las Vegas.
It's just because something for everyone, huh?
Yeah, they have amazing food. They have amazing casinos. The sights alone. I love Atlanta, by the way. But there's a lot of places. I've been to New York, but that was just for 4 days, so you don't really know a city.
I really want to take Sharissa and the kids to New York at Christmas time, because we're big Christmas people. So I want to see the tree.
So where would you suggest?
Okay, I love Utah. However, it's not really.
And you've been there?
Yeah, I've been there a few times. It's not really a family vacation. So my family is either put us down at the beach. I love the beach for 4 or 5 days, or Disneyland people. We love Disneyland.
So you live in the right state for at least Disneyland
both.
and the beach.
Oh, I got to stop trying to get to Utah, huh?
Yeah. Salt Lake's, I lived in Salt Lake.
Them lakes are pretty nice, though.
Yeah. See, I haven't been to because what area have you been to?
St. George, Hurricane, Roosevelt. And I love Roosevelt because it's a city named after my favorite president, Teddy Roosevelt.
See, and I haven't been to that area. And then you said you've been to Zion?
Zion, which is right outside of St. George.
So is Zion actually in the state of Utah? Or is it? Yeah, see, I've never been there. I lived in Murray, Utah, which is right adjacent to Salt Lake City for about 2 months in 1998. And I had to make a trip there about 7 years ago to Cottonwood, I think.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever heard of Cottonwood?
No.
In Utah? I think it's called Cottonwood in Utah.
But I do have to say, if you were going on a vacation with just your wife, one place I've been that is an amazing place to just go with your spouse is Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
I've heard good things about
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is great shopping. It's a city that's built on the side of the lake. The lake is beautiful, great food. I call it the San Diego of Idaho, if that makes sense.
I've always heard that. How close would that be to where you were at in Utah? Is that
far?
It's
That's
far.
Idaho, yeah. So you can fly into Spokane, Washington, and then it's like an hour drive from there.
See, I went to one of the best trips me and Suzanne ever had was in Las Vegas, and we stayed at the Wynn Hotel, and we went and seen the Blue Man Group.
Was that fun?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I liked it. And we rarely do this, but we ate at a really expensive restaurant owned by Emerald. He's the one that's like, bam. You know, he was real famous for a while. He's older now. But, man, it was amazing. I mean, just the appetizers alone, I was already completely full.
There was a cruise that Sharissa and I were thinking about going on that had like the Bobby Flay experience. Or no,
that's kind of cool.
Not Bobby Flay. Guy Ferrari. They had like 3 Guy Ferrari restaurants. They had like Guy Ferrari's Burgers. They had like Guy Ferrari's Mexican joint and something like that we wanted to go on. She really wants to go to one of Gordon Ramsay's restaurants.
I'd say Suzanne would probably want to do that too.
We should just send them.
Yeah, we should just send them.
Me and you can come in here and podcast.
Yeah, that would be cool. Suzanne's been to Vegas, but the only other trip, because most of my traveling she wasn't able to go, was she went on a business trip to San Francisco with me. And that was pretty cool. I like that. I've just honestly, when I traveled, either when the girls were little or even before we had kids, Suzanne's a worker and I'm a worker. So whenever I went to Atlanta, which I've been there several times, or Orlando, Florida. I've been there several times. New Orleans, all over the place. I just worked.
Yeah, Sharice and I have a hard time turning it off too. We're
Yeah.
like you guys. I mean, you
You
know
like
that.
to work.
We like to work. I mean, we'll have text exchanges at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night when we're talking about work.
And to end this properly, what was Trump doing after his assassination attempt a day later?
Working.
Working.
Yeah.
The boy was working.
That's
So,
crazy. But Teddy Roosevelt did the same thing.
yeah.
He got shot in the chest and came out 2
Really?
days later. 2 days later, gave a speech. Shot in the chest.
Was he shot as like a military person?
No, assassination attempt.
Really?
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt?
1902, I think. Something like that.
Dang, that's crazy.
I like them gangsters.
By the way, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump,
I am also voting for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
like J.D. Vance. And listen, when Amber Rose got up and spoke, I didn't even know who Amber Rose was until about 2 months, maybe less, a month ago. But when I seen an African-American woman get up that said her dad tried to tell her a couple years ago that Trump was a great guy, and then she met Trump and his wife and realized everything ever said about Trump was a lie when it comes to racism. She goes, the reason I know is because I did research. And she goes, I would encourage all of you all to do research. But when I seen an African-American woman saying that has clout, that is a model that probably is being hated on viciously right now for backing Trump, I went, yeah, no matter what issues Trump has, I would vote for him way before.
Well, this is one of those things that the politicians love to harp on. Like, one of the very first things Donald Trump did when he got into president was like triple the amount of funding to historical black colleges.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Well, then the Democratic side is like, he's only doing that for blah, blah, blah. Right. Well, who maybe he is, maybe he's not. But then in the debates, Biden's like, what have you ever done for black people? And it's like, well, hold on. Like, the first thing he did was triple the funding to their the historical black colleges. And then when you say that, when somebody says a quote unquote, what have you ever done for black people? And then you say, well, I tripled their funding for their colleges. Biden goes, well, you only did that because, and it's like, well, you just asked, what have I done?
Well, what did Biden say in the 2020 election cycle? If you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
That's crazy.
Biden said that.
That's great. But didn't he also, what's his headline in the newspapers in the 80s? He said something about,
oh, yeah. You got to put all those
monkeys in cages or something.
Yeah, something like that.
That's wild.
But see, that's the thing is all the rhetoric that these people have said over the years, they've all said it. No one wants to talk about. It's like Hillary Clinton or anything. Nobody wants to talk about any of that because Trump, that's the thing that I do say with Trump that I give him a pass on. They have relentlessly come after this guy. And the reason I don't believe the assassination was just a lone wolf or this strange kid, everything they've tried with indictments and everything else and all these fake cases.
They've tried everything but assassination.
So what's the last thing? Because, man, they're desperate. They know. I wouldn't doubt if Trump got 80, 85 million
votes.
Well,
you know how desperate they are. They're so desperate that their own party is trying to convince Biden not to run.
Yes.
Like, they're like, no, we need somebody with a little bit more mental.
And no matter who they bring now, because I think it would be Michelle Obama, but I've heard she doesn't want to run. But let's just say she does.
I think it's going to be our lovely governor.
It could be Gavin Newsom.
Hate's a bad word.
But I think the thing is, people in this country have woken up, including Democrats, and went, these people are wicked.
Yeah.
And I see Trump for who he is now, and I'll take a little bit of the mean tweets and all that, or whatever else it may be, because this guy loves the United States of America.
And it's also crystal clear politics. Not to say that he doesn't hide things and there's confidential things, but when he's in office or when he's running, it's crystal clear. It's, you know what it is. And even my family from 2016 to 2020 went on a roller coaster ride of financials because that's when I got my accident in the construction industry and lost my job and basically $40 an hour of our income gone, which is a lot of money. What I was financially more stable from in that time than I was between 2020 and 2024 with working full-time, multiple streams of income at the
Because
school.
what's happened over the last 4 years?
Because of the inflation and the gas prices and everything like that. So even just being on unemployment outside of, I didn't collect any COVID unemployment. So just standard regular unemployment. COVID unemployment was crazy. It was basically $40 an hour.
Mm.
But my family was more in a better financial state then than we were from 2000 to 2024 with 2 full-time jobs.
Wow. Yeah, and I never understand a lot of that inflation stuff, but it was weird how Trump had everything at low prices, and as soon as maybe 6 months to a year after Biden was in, everything.
Well, we had domestic oil and we had domestic manufacturing, so you're not paying shipping and handling on oil, you're not paying shipping and handling on a lot of resources.
Yeah.
And then he was telling countries, we're done paying for this stuff. You guys want to do business with us, you guys pay us.
Because Trump's a businessman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the Coke at Disneyland. Did you know that Disneyland is the only theme park that doesn't pay for a sponsorship with a soda company?
Really?
So Knott's, they have to pay Coke to have Coke there. Six Flags, SeaWorld, you name all those amusement parks. Disneyland's the only one that's like, oh, no, you pay us.
Dang.
If you don't want, if you want Coke in our park, you pay us. If you don't want to pay us, Pepsi will.
Mm.
So Knott's, they're like, we want Coke. We're going to pay you X amount of dollars to have Coke products in our park. SeaWorld, same thing. Disneyland, you want to be in our park? You pay us, then you can be in our park.
So do they have Coke and Pepsi?
No, they don't. Just Coke.
Just Coke.
And they have Coke and Sprite. Don't ask for any of the other Coke products.
So they're like, this is what we sell.
We sell Coke and Sprite and
Dang,
Diet Coke.
I didn't know that.
And is there Diet Sprite? I don't know if there's Diet Sprite.
Yeah, I think there
Sprite,
is. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. Disneyland. And they didn't start that way. It started with them paying Coke to have their products in their park. But then at some point they realized, oh, we're more valuable than Coke. We don't need to pay them. Same thing. Starbucks paid Disneyland to have a Starbucks in Disneyland. So there's one on downtown on Main Street right there. Right. That's when you walk in, there's a Starbucks right there. Disney didn't go to Starbucks and say, hey, are you interested in partnering up?
Yeah.
Do you want to add a store in our Disneyland? Starbucks went to them and was like, yo, we kind of want a piece of this.
Wow.
Yeah.
True play?
No True Play today.
No True play today.
No True Play today.
Oh, dang.
All right. Thank you guys for writing this out with us. An hour and 16 minutes.
Dang.
This is our longest podcast
man.
yet, but I feel like it was good.
It's because we went longer than your wife, my wife, and my daughter.
But we had Trump in the room with us.
We had Trump in the room, and we have the Holy Spirit in the room, too.
Thank you guys for diving into the deep end. We can't wait to see you guys next week. We have a super awesome guest, but we'll leave that for you guys to be surprised by next week. We'll see you later. Love you guys. Peace.